12 o'clock. Welcome to Colour, Lesson 3. This is our recap. I know from the comments today already that people have seen the video about colour and enjoyed it. And today I will recap that and welcome your questions and comments afterwards for those who can't join us live. So we have in the last couple of days looked at composition and light. And composition, you'll remember that I really am focused on composition as it affects you. So where are you coming from? What's the art doing for you? And what do you hope that your paintings are, what effect do you hope they're having on your viewer? Because that will affect your composition. So as I've said, I paint small flowers big because I want people to see them. So I get my camera up close, or I paint up, a composition that's up close. And then we have all the tools as painters to create depth of field, whether we change the intensity of the color that we'll talk about today, or the fuzziness of the lines, because that's what our eye is doing to be able to read something as 3D within the 2D. So that's what we looked at in composition, and then we looked at color, light, because we can't see anything without light. So the form is created by the darkness or lightness, and the discipline of using our little grayscale can really help you problem solve and diagnose when you're painting, whether you've got the darks dark enough and the lights light enough when you're creating an image. And to make sure I get that right, I do an underpainting, and that's what helps me. And I asked you all to start having a look at what are the paintings that really attract your eye, the paintings that you love. And you might even, regarding light, actually take a picture of it and then switch it into black and white, into mono, and you can see the whole form is there before color gets involved. But today we talk about color. So let's have a look at that, because color is something we all love. We love, to see bright, vibrant color, but also it's something that probably has the highest fear factor for artists. So let's look at color. So we will talk about color according to its 4 factors that it's usually discussed in. So there are 4 things, 4 ways we talk about color and areas of its characteristics. Hue, when you hear people talk about hue, they're actually talking about the position on the spectrum. So the light spectrum is the wavelengths that we can visually see. And that spectrum, we see it, we're familiar with it as a color wheel, you're familiar with it as a rainbow. And the hue is where does it sit in those 7 colors on that actual light range. And I've made a video for you called Create the Colors You See. And in that, here's my book. I encourage you, as boring as it might seem, but it is the most useful tool. I use my little book with the colors that I make all the time, because I can immediately, at a glance, have a look at what do I need to combine to make that color. And wherever you've created a rule of thumb, the word for that is heuristic, you've already created things that will help you stay in the flow of your work and keep moving. So I encourage you to have a limited number of colors, and then know how to create all the colors you want from that limited palette. So that's what I'm doing in there, and that's really all about hue, is you knowing how to get the colors you want and change that hue by using your paints and you don't have to buy all the different colors of paint, because you know there's an old saying about whatever green you've got, it's never going to be the right one. And as you know, a color changes all the way through as we paint, because of the way the light hits it, how much is in shadow, how much is in light. So us knowing how to manage the hue and have some control over that, it makes you so much more confident and comfortable. So if you want to be more familiar, because it's all about familiarity with your paints and your colors, then have a look at this exercise of create the colors you see and actually make them in your own book so that you can refer back to your little charts. It honestly saves you so much time. At the beginning of any painting, I still will get out my charts and have a look at how I can make certain colors. And will I mention it here? Yes, probably understanding also the way colors work in terms of their hue. I mentioned to you in the video that names like cadmium and the ultramarine, there are old paints originally were made from elements out of the earth, and they're consistent colors, cobalt, and then the new colors have been made in the laboratory. And interestingly, they have all of those hard to pronounce words like quinacridone and phthalo, pyrrole, and they have really good light permanence because they've been created in the lab for that reason. But there are colours like phthalo blue, and I've heard that referred to by a Monash University lecturer in the past. He used to call it thug blue because you use a tiny bit of that, boom, and it goes everywhere. And if you use phthalo blue, you'll know that. So the newer colours tend to also respond differently. So have a look at the colours that I've used in Create the Colours You See, and you can make your own range of colours and build your confidence and familiarity. When we talk about intensity, and again, I've made a video specifically for this, but I'm talking about the brightness or in fact the darkness in terms of how intense, the dullness. So this is very bright. Where are you and where am I? Okay, we've got really intense color, and then underneath I've softened that where the shadow is, right? And so we change with where the picture is in terms of the depth of field. We also change the intensity of the color. And in the video and lesson that I've made, color intensity, I explain that the way to change the intensity is one way. You could just make the bright red less bright red by adding in black, but you would really dampen it. What I do is take the color from the opposite part of the color wheel, so the green that is the complement across the color wheel, and put that into the red, and that just softens it while still maintaining the color and the interest. So color intensity is something that's a great tool for understanding how to make that same bright red, but when it's in shadow, because it's still red, but also a great tool for understanding once something is further back. So further back in the field, the intensity reduces of the color, as well as softening of the edges and lines. Now that brings us to temperature. Temperature, the warmness or coolness of the color. Now this is something that speaks to me most when I'm doing skin. So I think I've said to you that I might be using cadmium red on the red here, on the bright intensity of the cheek. But when I get into these purple bits, when you get right in here in close, it's like the bruise colours, bruise hues. And then I would get that from alizarin crimson. So the different colours and their temperature is what we look at there. Is something very warm, so a really deep cadmium gold colour that's very warm, but a yellow that's in the highlight, the brightest highlight. I'm going to move out of that field. The highlight colour, then that would be a cad yellow light in with the white, because there's never really just white in our paintings. So that temperature will be relevant to, again, showing the eye what is the positioning. And the other point that I want to make about this then is value, and that of course is the lightness or the darkness. So as we talked about light yesterday and how the light hits your subject, we also are talking about it as regards colour today and how that is affecting our painting. So what I did in the exercise in the video was I've started again here with my grayscale to show you where there is the most light and the least light. But then what I've done is take the colours, and you can see that when I try and match them up to where do they sit on the scale. So the blue, trying to make my fingers work in reverse is very hard. The blue is right down here in the darkest part of the value scale. The red for cad red is up here in the middle, and then the yellow is really a light colour. So it is a light colour, and even though that red is very intense, that's a middle value, and that blue is really a darker kind of colour. So again, if you're trying to create something with a lot of light, sometimes we can fall into the trap of just adding lots of white, and when you add lots of white, you reduce the intensity. So it can help you to problem solve and try and work out why a colour is or isn't working when you understand something about the colours themselves having specific values. Now, the next thing about colour is I just want to explain the emotional nature of colour. So I might have mentioned to you that when I started to paint, I chose Australian natives. I haven't got one today because I wanted something really bright because we're talking about colour. But what I did was I decided to make placemats and coasters for the international market. And I set myself a number of weeks, and I had to paint eight different Australian natives and do one each week. Well, I painted in that period, in my 8 weeks, I painted 12, and then I put the pictures all on Facebook to ask everybody which ones did they like, which ones should I include. These are the actual placemats, and I think I showed you the actual painting for that one yesterday. And what happens is you get to see a lot about how we respond to colour. And what happened was in the responses, people would say, so there's one that was a blue Leschenoltia, which is a really bright blue flower. And people would say, oh, I love blue, so they'd pick blue. Or others would say, oh, my grandma had that grevillea at her back door. That's my number one, because I got people to rank them. It's very interesting that colour has a very emotional response for us, and that takes us back to understanding about the brain. So remember, I've been talking about you finding what has meaning for you as an artist. You finding the thing that really switches you on, because when you find that, I see people search and search, and when they find it, wow, it's like going from roaming along to getting on the railroad track. Everything starts to move in one direction. People know you're interested, so you attract people who are interested in the same kind of subject. Everything just becomes as if you're in the right stream in the river and flowing along. So with colour and emotion, I said to you how the brain loves repetition, harmony and pattern. And if we think of it in music, we've got the riffs repeated, and then the chorus, and then the riffs repeated, and then the chorus. And it's the difference that attracts our attention, because our brain is saying to us, yeah, we want things to all be recognizable and familiar, so we don't use up too much energy just in case there's a saber-toothed tiger. All right, so it's always causing a little bit of resistance when you try and problem solve, learn new things, think about new ventures. It will cause resistance. So once we recognize that, we can work past it. Where color is concerned and the emotional aspect, you see, when we want to embed a memory, we add emotion. So I might have said to you that the brain likes harmony and repetition, but it will be attracted by something that is a novelty. So something different moves differently and it attracts our attention because of that reason, that we're making sure that thing is safe for us. So novelty meaning it's just different than everything that's been happening. Now, if we also add emotion at that point, we embed a memory. So that's why we have memories about great things, we have memories about bad things. And we can choose to keep thinking about the bad thing, which means we make a super highway of connections to it, or we can choose to create new pathways to new things. So those emotional memories are embedded within us. And when somebody wants to get you to paint something for them, it will be certain colours that attract their attention. You know, the abstract painters know so much about colour attracting people's attention. John Olson, I love his paintings of the Lake Eyre. It's just the blue and yellow hues, and they're soft and calming and beautiful. So the colours are having that harmonious effect on you when you actually look at them. So it's another thing to think about in terms of what you're creating, the emotional impact that you're going to have on people. Do you want it to be calming and soothing, or do you want it to stimulate and get people going and wake them up? What is it you're actually trying to achieve when you look at colour in your paintings? And I must say, even though this was an exercise, people often, people offer to buy it or whatever, but I like to keep it because I just like the happy colour. So there are even, for me, I changed the paintings. So there are different reasons that you might want to be in your blue phase, in your rose phase. We know that artists have changed over time in these things. So keep in mind that colour is looked at in terms of its hue, its intensity, the temperature, and also value. So there are different ways of knowing about it and understanding it. And when you just apply yourself to these for just a few hours and create some exercises that you can refer back to, you will make yourself feel more confident, and you'll know that you're learning things. Ooh. And that was me getting my glasses to see Mary Rose's comments. So true. Thank you, Mary Rose. As the glasses are on the floor. But you know, that's the things I want you to know about colour is that it is going to have an impact on people. It's going to have an impact on you. And we can choose to create these impacts that we want to have. And I'm always going to be coming from the point of view of creating beauty. That, I feel life is difficult enough. and my job as an artist is, yes, to help people see things differently in the world, but I'm driven by helping people respond to nature and be more curious. And so I invite you to keep up this journey of really beaming in to what's painting for you. And like I said, you just enjoy sitting and painting a beautiful flower like this. And I really think there can be no better motivation than that. Or you have messages you want to convey or journeys you want to take people on, because all of those things, they have a sequence of information that helps it work better and makes it easier and more fun for you. So I really encourage you to keep looking for and clarifying what art is doing for you and where you'd like to take it. So thank you so much for joining us today. And tomorrow we look at diving deeper into your whole art practice and thinking through the process. I use a step-by-step process to help me paint, and that's what makes a really big difference for me. So thanks again for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye. Let's see if I can turn it off without my glasses. Yeah.